Emily had been working at the busy downtown restaurant for a few years now. Every morning, she would tie her hair back, put on her apron, and step into the crowded dining hall with a smile. Even if her legs felt tired and her back ached from the previous day, she knew that her job was not glamorous. She spent most of her day carrying heavy trays, clearing tables, and making sure customers had everything they needed. But she had learned to find small joys in the simple things: the laughter of a child at a nearby table, the polite thank you from a regular customer, or the quiet moment when the lunch rush slowed down for a few minutes. What most people did not know about Emily was that she had a secret passion. Since she was a little girl, she had been in love with the piano. She could spend hours at home playing, letting her fingers move across the keys and filling her room with music. It was her escape from the world, a place where she could forget all the stress and just focus on the notes. She had never had formal training, but her natural talent had grown with practice, and over the years, she had developed a style that was smooth, expressive, and emotional. Her music told stories even if she kept it to herself. That morning, the restaurant was busier than usual. A high-profile business meeting was scheduled, and the staff had been preparing for days. The manager had reminded everyone to be on their best behavior. Emily adjusted her apron one last time and took a deep breath before heading into the dining area. The smell of fresh bread, brewed coffee, and sizzling food filled the air, and she felt the familiar mix of nerves and excitement that came with working during important events. As she moved between tables, Emily noticed the polished grand piano sitting in the corner of the room. It had been there for years, mostly untouched. Sometimes, during slow evenings, she would glance at it longingly, imagining herself sitting down and letting her fingers dance across the keys. But today, her mind was on the customers. She had to make sure that every drink was poured, every plate cleared, and every smile returned. There was no time for daydreaming. The restaurant doors opened, and a group of people entered. They were dressed in sharp suits and expensive dresses, carrying briefcases and looking very important. Emily quickly realized that these were the business people for the meeting. She straightened her posture and greeted them politely, showing them to their reserved table. She could feel the tension in the air. These meetings were serious, and every detail mattered. She made a mental note to be extra careful, to anticipate every need before it was asked. As she served drinks and cleared plates, Emily listened quietly to the conversations at the other tables. Most of the regular customers chatted casually, but at the reserved table, the discussion was intense. Numbers were mentioned, contracts were glanced at, and she could sense the high stakes involved. Emily tried to stay invisible, moving efficiently but silently, making sure she didn't interrupt or draw attention to herself. She had seen how important it was not to make mistakes during these moments. Even a small spill or delay could ruin the impression the restaurant made. Despite her busy work, Emily's mind kept drifting back to the piano. She remembered the melodies she had practiced the night before, the way certain songs made her feel light and free. She thought about how wonderful it would be if only she could play a piece right now, just to bring a little calm into the room. But she pushed the thought away, telling herself that it was not her place. She was just a waitress, and the piano was just furniture in the corner. The lunch rush began in full swing. Orders flew in, plates were delivered, and the clatter of dishes and chatter of customers created a lively, chaotic symphony. Emily moved through it all with precision, balancing trays and answering questions without missing a beat. Her manager walked by and gave her a nod of approval, which made her feel proud. She loved the feeling of being in control, of handling everything with grace, even when the stress piled up. Then, something happened that made her pause. A waiter from another section accidentally dropped a plate near the reserved table. The sound of breaking china made the business people look up sharply. For a moment, the atmosphere tensed. Emily felt her stomach twist. She hurried over with a cloth and apologized profusely, making sure everything was cleaned up quickly. The manager whispered to her to stay calm. The meeting would continue, but she could see that the tension had not completely faded. Emily stepped back and took a deep breath. She wanted to do something, anything, to make the room feel calm again. Her eyes instinctively drifted toward the grand piano. For a brief second, a thought crossed her mind. Maybe just a soft melody could change the mood, but she shook her head. Who was she to play? She was only a waitress. She had no right to interrupt a serious business meeting. Still, she couldn't ignore the feeling in her chest. A mixture of anxiety and hope. She continued her duties, but every now and then, she glanced at the piano longingly. The business people's conversation continued, and she noticed that they were frowning, clearly stressed about the discussion. She wanted to help, but how could a simple waitress do anything to ease such tension? As the lunch went on, Emily began to realize something important. Even if she was just a waitress, she had a gift that no one else could offer. Music had always had the power to soothe, to calm, and to inspire. If she could find a way to share that gift, even for a few minutes, maybe she could make a difference. Her heart raced as the idea grew stronger. She imagined sitting at the piano and letting her fingers play what her mind and heart felt at that moment. Emily knew she had to finish her current tasks first. She continued to move between tables, clearing dishes, refilling drinks, and responding to polite but sharp inquiries from the customers. Every step she took felt heavier, though, because the urge to play was growing stronger. She imagined the notes flowing, filling the restaurant with warmth and calm, helping the business people to relax and focus. It was a strange thought for someone in her position, but she could not shake it. Finally, as the lunch began to slow down for a brief moment, Emily found herself alone near the piano. The staff were busy elsewhere, and the business people were absorbed in their conversation. Her fingers brushed the keys lightly, feeling the smoothness of the polished surface. The music in her mind began to take shape. She could almost hear the melody, soft and flowing, just enough to reach the ears and hearts of those around her. Emily took another deep breath, steadying herself. She reminded herself that this was not about showing off or proving anything. It was about helping, about creating a small moment of peace in the middle of a tense day. She sat down carefully, adjusted her posture, and allowed her fingers to touch the keys. The first note rang out gently, breaking the silence in a way that was soft but noticeable. At that moment, Emily felt a mix of fear and excitement. She didn't know if anyone would notice, or if they would even care. But as she continued to play, the sound began to fill the room in a natural, comforting way. The business people looked up, surprised at first, then intrigued. The notes were not loud or flashy, but they carried a gentle, calming energy that seemed to soften the room. Emily realized that she had found a way to use her gift, even in a place where she least expected it. Time seemed to slow down as she played. The stress of the lunch, the pressure of the high-stakes meeting, and even her own nervousness started to fade. She was no longer just a waitress clearing tables. She was a musician sharing her heart through the piano. For the first time, she felt completely present, completely alive, and completely connected to those around her. By the time the first few business people smiled and relaxed, Emily knew that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. What started as a nervous glance at the piano was turning into a moment that might change everything. She continued to play, unaware of what would come next, but ready to face it with courage and her music in her hands. The business people sat around the large table, discussing numbers, contracts, and plans. Their conversation was fast and intense, filled with technical words and complicated phrases. Emily watched from a distance, carefully refilling water glasses and taking away empty plates. She moved quietly, making sure not to interrupt, but her attention kept drifting back to the grand piano in the corner. She could feel the tension in the room growing. Some of the investors were frowning, others seemed frustrated, and the air felt heavy with pressure. Emily's heart ached a little. She wished there was something she could do to ease the mood. As she worked, she noticed small signs of stress. One of the investors tapped his pen nervously against the table. Another kept glancing at his phone, muttering under his breath. The manager walked past, giving Emily a reassuring look, but she could tell he was worried too. It was clear that this meeting was extremely important. If anything went wrong, it could cost the company millions. Emily felt a small knot of anxiety form in her stomach. She knew she had to stay focused on her duties, but her mind kept spinning with ideas about how she might help. A waiter accidentally dropped a fork near the table. The sound echoed sharply, and everyone looked up. There was a brief pause, a moment when everything seemed frozen. Emily rushed over, apologizing quickly and picking up the fork. She offered a polite smile, trying to calm the situation, but the tension didn't completely disappear. The investors' conversation resumed, but the stress was still there. Emily felt helpless. She wanted to do something more than just clear tables and refill drinks. She wanted to make a real difference. Her eyes drifted again toward the grand piano. It seemed so inviting, like it was quietly asking to be played. She remembered the hours she had spent at home, practicing melodies she had created herself. She remembered the feeling of her fingers moving over the keys, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful. The thought of playing right here in this moment grew stronger in her mind. It was risky, she knew. Who would expect a waitress to sit down and play in the middle of a high-profile business lunch? But the idea kept coming back, persistent and impossible to ignore. Emily took a deep breath and tried to focus on her tasks. She cleared dishes, refilled glasses, and smiled at customers, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She imagined what it would feel like to let the music flow through the room, to calm the nerves and soften the tension. She could see it in her mind. The investors leaning back, their shoulders relaxing, their faces changing from stress to ease. She wanted to create that moment, even if it was just for a few minutes. The lunch continued, and Emily noticed that the investors were beginning to argue over some detail. Voices grew louder, and the room's energy felt heavier. She felt a pang of worry. The deal seemed to be at risk. For a moment, she felt frozen. She wanted to help but didn't know how. Then a sudden thought hit her like a spark. Maybe music could do what words could not. Maybe if she played something soothing on the piano, it could calm everyone and change the mood. Her heart raced as she imagined trying, but she also felt fear. What if she failed? What if she made things worse? Still, the idea would not leave her mind. She finished her current tasks as quickly as possible, then slowly walked toward the piano. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the polished keys. The room was noisy with background chatter, the clatter of dishes, and the hum of conversation, but she began to play softly. The first few notes were hesitant, almost shy, but gradually they grew more confident. The sound was smooth and gentle, a melody that floated through the air like a soft breeze. The business people looked up in surprise. At first, they weren't sure where the music was coming from, but as Emily continued to play, their attention shifted. Faces that had been tense and anxious began to relax. Eyebrows unfurrowed, and lips curved into small, appreciative smiles. Emily's melody was not flashy or showy. It was simple, calming, and emotional, but it had power. It changed the energy in the room. Conversations slowed down, and the previously stressed investors leaned back in their chairs, listening. Emily's hands moved naturally over the keys, each note flowing smoothly into the next. She didn't think about impressing anyone. She just let the music speak for her. She thought about the stress she had felt earlier, the frustration she had seen on the investors' faces, and she poured that energy into her performance. The melody was hopeful, soothing, and uplifting all at once. Emily felt a sense of calm wash over her too, as if the piano was sharing its magic with her as well as everyone in the room. The manager and other staff stopped what they were doing for a moment to watch. They had never seen anything like this before. A waitress, someone who had always seemed quiet and reserved, was now playing with a skill and emotion that captivated the room. The clinking of cutlery and the hum of conversation faded into the background. For a brief time, the restaurant became a different place, one filled with music, warmth, and calm. As Emily continued, she noticed subtle changes in the investors' behavior. They were no longer leaning forward with tension or frowning over documents. Instead, they were listening, nodding, and even exchanging smiles. One of them quietly commented to another, and Emily could see their shoulders relax. The music had softened the atmosphere in a way that words and negotiation skills could not. Emily felt a small thrill of pride, but she remained humble, focused on the melody. Minutes passed, and the room's energy transformed completely. What had been a stressful, high-pressure lunch was now calm and almost serene. The business people were still discussing their deal, but their voices were softer, more cooperative. Emily's music had given them a space to think clearly, to breathe, and to connect. It was a quiet, subtle influence, but its effect was undeniable. She realized that her talent, something she had always kept to herself, could make a real difference in the world. When the melody finally ended, there was a brief pause in the room. The business people looked up, impressed and grateful, and some even clapped softly. Emily felt her cheeks flush with a mixture of relief and happiness. She had taken a risk, stepping out of her role as a waitress and using her gift, but it had worked. She had changed the mood of the room, and in her own way helped the million-dollar deal move forward. The manager approached her quietly, his eyes wide with admiration. He whispered a simple, "Thank you, Emily," and she nodded, feeling proud but still composed. She returned to her duties, clearing the remaining plates and refilling drinks, but she could sense that the room was no longer tense. The investors were talking with renewed energy, their expressions lighter, their body language more relaxed. Emily felt a deep satisfaction. She had done something meaningful, something beyond her usual responsibilities, and it felt incredible. After the lunch ended, a few of the business people approached her personally. They thanked her for her music, saying it had made the experience unforgettable and had helped them focus. Emily smiled, still feeling a little shy, but inside, she was thrilled. She realized that sometimes courage and talent, even from someone in a humble position, could have a huge impact. From that day on, she felt more confident in herself and her abilities, knowing that her music could touch people in ways that went beyond words. Emily returned to the piano a few times that evening, playing quietly during slow moments. She noticed the staff looking at her with new respect, and even the manager suggested she play more often. It was a small recognition, but it meant a lot. For Emily, the greatest reward was seeing the positive effect her music had on others. It reminded her why she had fallen in love with the piano in the first place. Because it could move hearts, calm nerves, and create moments of connection that nothing else could. That day, Emily learned something important. Being a waitress didn't mean she couldn't make a difference. Her talent, her courage, and her willingness to act in a moment of uncertainty had changed the course of a crucial business lunch. She felt proud, happy, and more determined than ever to keep playing, to keep sharing her music whenever she could. It was a turning point, a day that showed her that sometimes, even the smallest gestures from the most unexpected people could have a profound impact on the world around them. The lunch had settled into a rhythm, but the atmosphere was still heavy with tension. Emily moved carefully around the tables, ensuring that water glasses were filled and plates cleared. She had done everything she could to keep things smooth, but she could sense that the meeting was far from over. The business people were still discussing details intensely, and small signs of frustration were starting to show again. One of them sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair, while another ran a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. Emily felt a familiar pang of worry. She wanted to do more than just serve drinks and clear tables. She wished there was a way to bring calm back to the room. Her eyes drifted again to the grand piano in the corner. It seemed to call to her, inviting her to play. Emily's fingers itched to touch the keys, to let the melody she had practiced countless times flow through the room. She had always loved playing alone at home, but now the thought of using her music to help others filled her with both excitement and fear. What if it didn't work? What if she made things worse? But then she thought about the tense faces of the investors and the way the manager had been pacing nervously. Maybe this was her chance to do something meaningful. Emily finished her immediate tasks and took a deep breath. The piano was just a few steps away, polished and waiting. She sat down slowly, letting her hands hover over the keys. The room was noisy with the hum of conversation, clinking dishes, and distant laughter, but she began to play softly. The first notes were delicate, almost tentative, but they carried a warmth that immediately softened the energy in the room. Her melody was gentle, flowing, and full of emotion. It was not about showing off. It was about creating a moment of calm. The business people looked up, surprised at first. They had not expected music, especially not from a waitress. Their eyes met hers briefly, curiosity and surprise evident on their faces. Emily's fingers continued to move over the keys, each note carrying the emotion she wanted to share. She thought about the stress they were under and poured her own desire to help into the melody. The music grew steadier, more confident, filling the room with a soothing presence. Slowly, the tension began to ease. Shoulders relaxed, brows unfurrowed, and the previously impatient gestures softened. Emily felt a quiet thrill as she realized the effect her playing was having. She could see the investors listening, exchanging looks, and even nodding slightly. The room's energy shifted, as if her music had created an invisible bridge between the people who had been tense and disconnected. The manager paused near the piano, watching her with wide eyes, and the other staff stopped briefly to take in the moment. For once, Emily was not invisible. She was the center of attention, but not in a boastful way. Her focus remained on the melody, and in that focus, she found courage and calm. Minutes passed, and the melody flowed naturally. Emily allowed herself to be fully immersed in the music. She thought about each note, each pause, each rise and fall of the melody. She wanted to create an experience that felt genuine and heartfelt. She was not performing for applause. She was playing to bring relief and clarity. She could see the subtle changes in the investors' faces, the way they leaned back, exchanged small smiles, and even whispered to each other. Her music had shifted the mood in ways words could not. The tension that had been building since the meeting began seemed to melt away. Emily's hands moved gracefully, almost as if they had a mind of their own. The rhythm of her playing matched the natural pace of the room, soothing the nerves and inviting focus. The conversations that had grown heated now continued with more ease and cooperation. The music acted as a gentle guide, a quiet presence that reminded everyone to breathe, to pause, and to listen. Emily felt a deep satisfaction, realizing that her talent had a real impact beyond herself. As she played, Emily noticed small moments of connection among the business people. One of them smiled quietly at another, a gesture that had been absent earlier. Another investor leaned forward, listening intently, while a third nodded in agreement to a point being made. Emily's music created a backdrop that allowed them to communicate more effectively, to think more clearly, and to find a rhythm in their discussion. She realized that she was helping not just by playing, but by creating an atmosphere that encouraged cooperation and understanding. Emily continued to play, letting the music flow naturally. She thought about the hours she had spent practicing at home, the melodies she had imagined, and the emotions she had poured into each piece. Now, for the first time, she was sharing that with others in a way that mattered. The restaurant staff watched in quiet amazement. They had never seen someone use their hidden talent so courageously and effectively. Emily's music was not just notes on a page. It was a bridge between people, a tool for easing tension, and a reminder that even small actions could have a big impact. The melody reached a gentle conclusion, and the room remained quiet for a moment. The investors looked around, appreciative and relaxed. The previously heavy atmosphere had lifted, replaced by calm, focus, and even a touch of wonder. Emily sat back slightly, taking a deep breath and feeling a wave of relief and pride. She had done something remarkable, something that went beyond her duties as a waitress. She had used her gift to change the energy of the room, to help people feel better, and to make the meeting more successful. The manager approached her, smiling and shaking his head in disbelief. He whispered quietly, "That was incredible, Emily." And she nodded, still feeling a little shy but deeply satisfied. The investors returned to their discussion with renewed focus, more relaxed and cooperative than before. Emily resumed her work, clearing the remaining plates and refilling glasses, but she carried with her a sense of accomplishment and a new confidence. She had taken a risk, stepped out of her ordinary role, and had succeeded in a way she never expected. As the lunch continued, Emily reflected on the power of music and courage. She realized that talent alone was not enough. It was the willingness to act, to take a risk, and to use that talent for others that created true impact. She had never imagined that her simple love for the piano could influence $1 million deal. But in that moment, she saw clearly that it could. Her heart swelled with pride and joy, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. By the time the lunch ended, Emily had become more than just a waitress. She was someone who had made a difference in a high-pressure situation, someone whose talent and courage had touched the lives of people she had never met before. The investors thanked her personally as they left, expressing their appreciation for her music and its calming effect. Emily smiled quietly, feeling humble but proud. She knew that this day would stay with her forever, a reminder that sometimes, even the smallest acts of bravery and skill could create extraordinary results. Emily returned to the piano during slower moments of the afternoon, playing softly for the enjoyment of the staff and the few remaining customers. Each note reminded her of the lesson she had learned. Courage, talent, and kindness, when combined, could create moments of magic. She felt more confident in herself and her abilities, knowing that her music could bring people together, calm their fears, and even influence important decisions. For Emily, this day marked the beginning of a new chapter, one in which she would continue to play, share her gift, and embrace the extraordinary possibilities hidden within ordinary moments. Emily felt the energy in the restaurant shifting. The business people were starting to smile, their tense expressions softening as her music filled the space. It was a delicate balance. She didn't want to draw too much attention to herself, but she also wanted to continue helping with her music. Each note she played seemed to calm the room, bringing a sense of warmth and focus. Emily realized that her piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge connecting everyone in the room. Her heart raced as she continued, knowing that the success of the lunch might now depend on this unexpected intervention. The investors leaned back in their chairs, listening more intently to her melody. Their conversation slowed, and the arguments and raised voices that had been creeping back into the discussion began to fade. Emily could see the change in their body language, the way their shoulders relaxed, the tension leaving their faces. The manager and other staff moved quietly around the room, careful not to disturb the moment, but they couldn't hide their amazement. Emily, a waitress, was creating an atmosphere that no one had expected, and yet it felt perfectly natural. A few of the business people exchanged glances, and Emily noticed small smiles appear on their faces. The melody was working. It was soft, expressive, and confident without being showy. She poured all her emotion into the music, thinking about the stress that had filled the room earlier and the way a simple melody could change everything. Her fingers moved with a fluidity she had only experienced in moments of private practice at home, but now each note carried an extra layer of significance, reaching the hearts of the people around her. Time seemed to slow as Emily played. The clattering of dishes, the hum of conversation, and the background noise of the restaurant all faded into a soft blur. For those few minutes, the room was entirely focused on the music. Emily felt completely absorbed in the moment. It was not just about playing the piano anymore. It was about creating a calm, harmonious space where people could think clearly, connect, and breathe. She realized that her gift was more powerful than she had ever imagined, capable of transforming tension into calm and anxiety into cooperation. As the melody progressed, the investors' conversation shifted. What had been fragmented and tense now flowed smoothly, with people listening to each other and responding thoughtfully. Emily noticed small signs of connection, subtle nods, quiet smiles, and gestures of agreement that had not been present before. Her music was guiding them, providing a gentle rhythm that allowed them to collaborate instead of clash. She felt a swell of pride but remained focused on the notes, careful not to let her emotions distract her from the task at hand. The manager approached quietly, watching Emily play with wide eyes. He whispered, "I can't believe this," and Emily gave him a small nod without stopping. She was aware of the attention, but her focus remained on the piano. The melody flowed effortlessly now, carrying with it a confidence that she had never experienced in such a public setting. She had always loved playing in the privacy of her home, but this moment was different. The stakes were higher, the audience unfamiliar, and yet the music was connecting them all in a way words never could. Emily's fingers danced across the keys, creating harmonies that seemed to resonate with the people in the room. The tension that had been so thick earlier was now replaced by a sense of calm and clarity. The business people leaned forward, engaged in their discussion, but with a new openness and willingness to listen. Emily felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that her actions were making a difference. This was not about recognition or praise. It was about helping others, using her gift to create a positive impact when it was needed most. The melody reached a gentle crescendo, a point where the music seemed to hold the room in its embrace. Emily's heart pounded, aware that the effect she was creating could influence the outcome of the meeting. She continued to play, careful to maintain a balance between expressive emotion and subtlety. The business people's focus shifted from their disagreements to the harmony in the room, allowing them to communicate more effectively. Small gestures of collaboration began to emerge, and Emily could see the beginnings of resolution in their body language. For Emily, it was a moment of profound realization. She understood that courage and skill, when combined with empathy and awareness, could create extraordinary results. Her music was no longer a private escape. It was a tool for connection, understanding, and change. She felt a surge of pride and humility simultaneously. Here she was, a waitress in a busy restaurant, using her talent to influence a group of important people in ways she had never imagined possible. The melody softened, flowing gently toward a calm conclusion. Emily's fingers lingered on the final notes, allowing the sound to resonate through the room. The investors paused, a quiet moment of reflection filling the air. Their faces showed a mix of relief and appreciation. The tension that had threatened to derail the lunch was gone, replaced by focus, cooperation, and a sense of accomplishment. Emily felt her chest swell with quiet pride. She had done something remarkable, something that went beyond her duties and reached into the hearts of those around her. The manager approached again, this time with a wide smile. He whispered, "You've changed everything." And Emily nodded softly, feeling both shy and proud. The staff looked at her with new respect, realizing that her talent and courage had created a unique moment that none of them would forget. The business people returned to their discussion with renewed energy, their gestures calmer, their voices more cooperative. Emily continued her duties quietly, but inside she felt a sense of achievement and purpose that would stay with her forever. As the lunch progressed toward its conclusion, Emily reflected on the power of her actions. She had stepped out of her ordinary role, taken a risk, and used her hidden talent to create a positive change. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of courage, empathy, and the willingness to act in uncertain situations. She understood that even small gestures, when guided by skill and intention, could have profound effects. Emily felt grateful for the opportunity to help, and more confident in herself and her abilities. When the meeting finally ended, the business people thanked her personally as they left. They expressed their appreciation for her music, saying it had created a calming and inspiring environment that allowed them to think clearly and make important decisions. Emily smiled quietly, feeling both humbled and proud. She had never imagined that her love for the piano could have such a tangible impact. This day had shown her that courage, talent, and a willingness to act could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. After the lunch, Emily returned to the piano during slower periods, playing softly for the staff and remaining customers. Each note reminded her of the lesson she had learned, that courage and skill, when used with intention, could create meaningful change. She felt more confident, knowing that her music had the power to touch hearts, calm nerves, and influence outcomes. Emily realized that she had found a way to make her gift matter in the real world, and she vowed to continue sharing it whenever she could. The experience had changed her, revealing the extraordinary potential hidden within ordinary life. The atmosphere in the restaurant had completely changed. The tension that had filled the room at the start of the lunch was gone. Emily continued to play softly on the piano, her fingers moving over the keys with a gentle confidence. She had found a rhythm that seemed to match the energy of the business people around her. Each note was carefully chosen, carrying calm, warmth, and focus. The investors were listening intently, no longer arguing or frowning, but engaged in a conversation that was flowing smoothly. Emily realized that her music had created the perfect environment for collaboration and understanding. The business people leaned forward, speaking to one another with a new openness. The previously tense discussion had transformed into a productive conversation. Emily's music had given them space to think clearly and communicate effectively. The manager watched quietly from a distance, amazed at what was happening. He had never seen a waitress use her talent in such a powerful way. The staff moved around carefully, making sure not to interrupt, but they couldn't hide their astonishment. Emily was no longer just serving tables. She was influencing the room with her gift. Emily felt a surge of pride and responsibility. She had never imagined that her piano playing could have such an impact. Every note she played now seemed to guide the energy of the meeting. The investors nodded, smiled, and made gestures of agreement, their body language softening. It was as if the music had created a bridge, allowing them to listen, understand, and connect. Emily realized that she had become an unexpected part of the negotiation, using her music to calm nerves and foster cooperation. As the lunch continued, Emily focused on the melody, making subtle changes to match the mood of the room. The business people's voices were calm and measured. Their conversation focused on solutions rather than conflict. Emily could see the results of her actions. Gestures of agreement, shared laughter at small comments, and the gradual building of trust among the investors. Her music had transformed the environment, creating a space where people could think clearly and make decisions without stress. Emily felt proud but remained humble, understanding that her role was to support, not to dominate. The manager approached her quietly, whispering, "You're saving this meeting." Emily smiled softly, keeping her hands on the keys. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, knowing that her actions had a real effect on the outcome of the lunch. The business people were responding, collaborating, and finding solutions. Emily's melody continued to flow, guiding the rhythm of their discussion. Each note was intentional, created to inspire focus and calm. She realized that her music had the power to change the mood, influence emotions, and even affect decisions. One of the investors looked up and smiled genuinely, turning to another and saying, "This is working better than I expected." Another nodded in agreement, leaning back and appearing more relaxed than before. Emily's heart raced with quiet joy. She had never played for such an audience before, and the stakes had never felt so high. Yet she had found the courage to use her talent in a moment of need. Her music had done what words and presentations could not. It had shifted the energy in the room, making the discussion productive and positive. Emily continued to play, her melody flowing effortlessly. She was fully immersed in the moment, feeling the connection between her music and the people around her. The previously tense and anxious energy was now replaced with calm, focus, and cooperation. The business people were working together, listening to one another, and making thoughtful decisions. Emily realized that her role as a waitress had expanded into something much more significant. She was no longer just serving tables. She was shaping the experience of everyone in the room. Minutes passed, and the discussion continued smoothly. Emily noticed the subtle changes in the investors' behavior. They were smiling, nodding, and leaning forward in engagement. The manager and staff exchanged quiet looks, clearly impressed by the impact of Emily's performance. She continued to play, her fingers moving with precision and emotion. Each note was deliberate, guiding the atmosphere and reinforcing the calm energy in the room. Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music was helping to achieve a positive outcome. As the lunch neared its conclusion, Emily played the final section of her melody, soft and reassuring. The business people paused, reflecting on the conversation they had just shared. Their expressions were relaxed, and a sense of satisfaction filled the room. Emily knew that her music had contributed to the successful resolution of the discussion. The previously tense negotiation had been transformed into a cooperative and productive conversation, and the million-dollar deal was now within reach. The investors thanked her personally as they prepared to leave. They expressed their gratitude for her music, saying it had created an environment that allowed them to focus, communicate effectively, and reach an agreement. Emily smiled quietly, feeling a mix of pride, humility, and happiness. She had taken a risk, stepped out of her ordinary role, and made a real difference. Her talent had turned a tense situation into a positive and memorable experience. The manager approached her again, this time with a wide smile and an appreciative nod. He whispered, "You've saved the deal, Emily. That was incredible." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly, and she nodded humbly. She had never expected such recognition, but she felt deeply satisfied. Her music had not only influenced the meeting, but had also shown her the power of courage and creativity in unexpected moments. After the lunch, Emily returned to the piano during slower periods, playing softly for the staff and remaining customers. Each note reminded her of the lesson she had learned. Talent, courage, and intention, when combined, could create extraordinary results. She felt more confident in her abilities, knowing that her music had touched hearts, calmed nerves, and influenced important decisions. Emily realized that she had discovered a way to make her gift matter in the real world and vowed to continue sharing it whenever possible. The experience had changed her, revealing the hidden potential within ordinary life. From that day on, Emily's life at the restaurant felt different. She continued to serve tables, refill drinks, and clear plates, but she carried with her the knowledge that her talent could create remarkable impact. Her music became a quiet force within the restaurant, capable of transforming tension into calm and anxiety into cooperation. Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose, inspired to play not only for herself but for others, knowing that even a simple melody could change the course of a day, a meeting, or even a life. The lunch had ended, and the business people were leaving the restaurant with satisfied smiles and a renewed sense of accomplishment. Emily watched them go, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and amazement. Her hands still hovered over the piano keys, as if reluctant to let go of the music that had carried her through the high-pressure meeting. She realized that something extraordinary had happened. What began as a simple act of playing the piano had become a moment that changed the course of a million-dollar deal. She could hardly believe it herself, and yet the reactions of the investors and the manager confirmed that it was real. The manager approached Emily, his face glowing with admiration. "I don't know what to say," he said quietly, almost in awe. "You didn't just play the piano, you saved the deal. Everyone is talking about it. That was incredible." Emily felt her cheeks flush. She had never sought recognition for her talent, but hearing the impact her music had made filled her with a quiet joy. She realized that her love for the piano, something she had always kept private, had touched people in a way that words or actions alone could not. It had bridged a gap, eased tension, and allowed important decisions to be made smoothly. As the staff gathered to help clean up after the busy lunch, they couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed. Their eyes sparkled with amazement, and they whispered excitedly among themselves. Emily smiled, still feeling shy, but she appreciated their admiration. For so long, she had worked in the background, unnoticed and unremarkable, and now her talent had become the center of attention in the most extraordinary way. The music she had played in a moment of courage had made her visible in a new light, and she felt a sense of validation that was both humbling and empowering. Later in the afternoon, Emily found a quiet moment to sit at the piano again. She let her fingers move gently over the keys, playing a soft melody that was all her own. It was a private celebration of what had happened, a way to reflect on the courage she had found and the difference she had made. The notes filled the empty restaurant, carrying a sense of calm and accomplishment. Emily felt connected to her music in a way she had never experienced before. She realized that the piano was more than just an instrument. It was a part of her, a voice she could use to influence the world around her. Word of Emily's performance spread quickly. Customers who had been in the restaurant during the lunch talked about the unexpected moment when the waitress played the piano and changed the mood of a high-stakes meeting. Even other businesses in the area began to take notice, and the manager received compliments from colleagues about the extraordinary atmosphere Emily had created. The restaurant became known not just for its food, but for the remarkable story of the waitress who saved $1 million deal with her music. Emily felt a mixture of pride and humility. She had never imagined that her simple act of playing the piano could have such far-reaching effects. As the days passed, Emily's confidence grew. She began to play the piano more often during slower hours, not just for herself, but for the enjoyment of the staff and the customers. Each performance reminded her of the power of courage, skill, and empathy. She realized that her music could bring people together, ease tension, and create moments of connection that were truly meaningful. Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that her talent was a gift meant to be shared, not hidden away. She had discovered that even ordinary people, in seemingly ordinary situations, could create extraordinary moments. The manager continued to encourage her, offering opportunities to play during special events and private gatherings. Emily accepted, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. Each time she played, she remembered the lunch when her music had influenced $1 million deal. She understood that her role was not just to entertain but to create an atmosphere, to inspire calm and cooperation, and to connect with people on a deeper level. Emily's life at the restaurant had changed, and she embraced the new possibilities with gratitude and determination. Emily also noticed a change in how the staff treated her. They looked at her with a newfound respect and admiration. No longer was she just a quiet waitress clearing tables. She was a talented musician whose courage and skill had made a lasting impact. The camaraderie among the staff strengthened, and Emily found herself mentoring new employees, sharing not just her work ethic but also the lessons she had learned about confidence, courage, and the power of using one's gifts. She felt proud to be a part of a team where everyone could contribute in unique ways, knowing that her own contribution had opened doors for herself and inspired others. The restaurant continued to host important meetings and events, and Emily became a quiet but influential presence. Her music was a tool that transformed ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. Customers and visitors often commented on the warmth and calm that seemed to permeate the space, and Emily knew that her playing was at the heart of it. She continued to hone her skills, practicing new melodies, experimenting with different styles, and always playing from the heart. Her music became a living part of the restaurant's identity, creating memories and connections that lasted long after each performance. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Emily sat at the piano in a quiet restaurant. The soft light reflected off the polished surface of the keys, and she allowed her fingers to move freely, creating a melody that was both reflective and uplifting. She thought about how far she had come, from a humble waitress quietly loving music at home to someone whose talent had touched lives in profound ways. She realized that courage, empathy, and the willingness to act had been as important as skill. Her music had not only influenced the lunch that day but had also opened a path for her own growth, confidence, and self-discovery. Emily's story became an inspiration to others. People admired how she had seized a moment, used her talent to make a positive impact, and transformed an ordinary day into something extraordinary. She received recognition from colleagues, customers, and even local media, all acknowledging her bravery and skill. But Emily remained grounded, understanding that the true reward was not recognition, but the knowledge that she had made a difference. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had created harmony, connection, and understanding in a world often filled with stress and tension. Over time, Emily continued to play, each performance carrying the same intention: to bring calm, joy, and focus to those around her. She had discovered the extraordinary power hidden within ordinary moments and had embraced her gift fully. Emily's life at the restaurant was no longer just about serving tables. It was about creating meaningful experiences, touching hearts, and leaving a lasting impression through her music. She knew that her piano was more than an instrument. It was a bridge to the world, a voice that could inspire, soothe, and transform. And she played with that understanding in every note, forever changed by the day her spontaneous piano saved $1 million deal.